I've sanded the whole guitar up to 220 grit, and I figured out where the bridge was going to sit and taped off under the bridge so that I don't have as much lacquer to scrape before I glue the bridge on. These two little sticks are just pieces of wood that have corresponding holes drilled into the soundboard, so I'll be able to line up the bridge exactly where it's supposed to be. It's easier to get the alignment right before you get the slick surface of lacquer on the guitar. So whenever possible, I'll line the bridge up before I start doing the finish work, and then it's less work later. So anyway, that's masked off. The sound hole is plugged. The fretboard is taped off so I don't get any lacquer on the fretboard. And now what I'm going to do is spray a couple of really thin coats of lacquer on the guitar. It's standard lacquer out of the can and then cut about 50% with lacquer thinner. A lot of people use sanding sealer, like vinyl sanding sealer, but I've never had great results with that. I find that the really thinned down lacquer penetrates the wood quite nicely and lets the subsequent sprays sink right in and adhere just the way they're supposed to. So I'll do a couple of thin coats and look it over and make sure that I haven't missed any little scratches or glue spots or anything. And then I'll be ready to do the Sunburst on the soundboard. The soundboard is going to have a sunburst, and I am masking off the rosette and the bindings along the edges because I don't want the colored lacquer to get on those. Masking does a pretty good job. I'll wind up still having to scrape a little bit here and there, but this reduces the amount of time I have to spend scraping off the bindings and rosette by quite a lot. So I'll get this all taped off, and then I will mask the sides of the guitar because I don't want the overspray going onto the sides. And then I'll be ready to start mixing colors and spraying the Sunburst. Everything's masked off, so now I'm going to start putting on the color. I'll start with the center, which is going to be sort of a yellowish. It's actually vintage amber lacquer dye with a couple drops of brown added to it. Being a cedar top it's going to be a fairly dark yellow, which is exactly the look I want. I don't have to spray the yellow all the way out to the edges because, of course, the tinting is going to get progressively darker as you move toward the edge. So I'll mostly concentrate it right around the bridge area. Now I'll let that dry for 20 or 30 minutes before I spray the next color. If I do it too quickly, the first color is still soft, and then when I build up more color next to it, I might get some runs in the lacquer. And when you get runs in tinted lacquer, it is almost impossible to make them go away without just stripping all the finish off and starting over. So have to be patient with this part. So that's the beginning of the transition color. Doesn't look like much yet until I get the darker edge sprayed. That's next. And then chances are pretty good I'll have to spray a little bit more of this reddish transition just to feather everything in nicely. But this is my process. So that's in, and then after this dries a little bit, I'll do the dark edge in tobacco brown and see if I need to do any more of this reddish. Okay, it's time to spray the outer dark edge. When I spray sunbursts, I use a standard gun. I don't use an airbrush because the airbrush creates too focused of a stream. So this gun, depending on which way I turn the head, it creates a fan-shaped pattern. And what I do when I'm spraying, especially the outer edge, is I just make sure that the inner part of the fan is hitting the guitar. So most of the lacquer that's tinted gets wasted and sucked into the exhaust fan. And that's why the filter over that fan is so discolored. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll spray the outer edge, and once I get that pattern looking pretty even, I'll decide whether or not I need to add some more of the transition color. I definitely want to put a little more of that reddish transition into it. I decided I wanted that transition to be a little bit more obvious, so I added a few drops of red dye to the lacquer, and I'm going to spray it one more time. Color looks good to me. Now I'm going to spray just one coat of clear lacquer over it, and that'll sort of protect the color when I remove the tape. If I have to do any scraping, I'm less likely to scratch where the color is if there's just a thin layer of clear over it. Okay, it's been quite a lot of hours since I sprayed the lacquer, the color, so now I can unmask and see how it looks. A couple of places to clean up, but it's really pretty good. So anyway, that's the sunburst process. I'll clean off these couple of places and then start spraying clear coats on the whole guitar.